नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. We have been discussing Srimad Bhagavad Gita, fourth chapter. So I'll do a quick recap of what we have seen till now, and then we will take it forward from there. So in the third chapter, if you remember, Krishna discussed about the practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga. And he also discussed how the greatest obstacle in practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga is actually lust, material attachments. Deep material attachments will not allow one to either remain nishkama or to perform one's prescribed duties with regulation. So towards the end of the chapter, Krishna described in detail about the obstacle of lust and how one can overcome lust, like that. So, but the primary discussion was about Nishkama Karma Yoga. So in the fourth chapter, Krishna continues the discussion by telling, Imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam vivaswan manave praha manur ikshvakave braveet. He says that, my dear Arjuna, whatever I have spoken to you about this Nishkama Karma Yoga, it is nothing new. Many yugas back, I spoke the same thing to Vivaswan. Vivaswan spoke it to his son Vaivasvatamanu, and Vaivasvatamanu spoke it to his son Ikshvaku. In this way, this knowledge was transmitted in parampara. But then what? Evam parampara praptam imam sakale neham hata yogo nashta parantapa. In this way, the saintly kings understood this subject matter, and if the kings understand this subject matter, automatically their subjects, the people of their kingdom, they also understand and assimilate this subject matter. And in this way, the sinless pious life is propagated through the kings. So when the kings understand it, then automatically the people, the common man understands. Yadyadacharati shreshtas tattadevetaro jana tayat pramanam kurute lokastadanuvartate. Like that. So, but sakale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. But that knowledge, by the powerful influence of time, over a period of time, it got broken. Okay. Now, why is Krishna speaking this subject matter? Why did Krishna speak this subject matter to Arjuna? Krishna says, Saevayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakacheti rahasyam hetaduttamam. Because you are my devotee and you are my friend, O Arjuna, that knowledge I am again presenting, that knowledge which was lost through you, even though it is very secret. So Arjuna, even though he understands very clearly the transcendental nature of Krishna, but nevertheless, other people should not take the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita very trivially, because if they think Krishna is an ordinary person or even an extraordinary human being, will not develop the right kind of appreciation for the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, in order to establish the supreme nature of Krishna, because Krishna himself would not speak about it unless prompted by his devotee. So Arjuna, as if ignorant, asked this question. Aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvatah Katametad vijaniyam tvam adau proktavaniti. So he says, my dear Krishna, you and me are of the same age. Vivaswan lived much before us. I have, so how am I to understand that you spoke this subject matter to Vivaswan? You know, so this prompting actually inspires Krishna to speak about the transcendental nature of this of his birth and activity, which he discusses in the next few verses. Very, very pivotal verses of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna says, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veta parantapa. He says that, my dear Arjuna, many, many births you and I have passed. I remember all the births, but you do not remember any. So basically, essentially, Krishna is indicating here that when Krishna appeared in the form of his many, many avatars, through one of his avatars, he bestowed this knowledge to Vivaswan, not as Krishna actually, but because that avatar is an amsha of Krishna, is an expansion of Krishna. Therefore, it is not inappropriate that I taught this to Vivaswan. And Krishna says, I remember all the births because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he says that, oh Arjuna, but you do not remember. Actually, as a Siddha, Arjuna is capable of remembering all the births. Because just like Krishna is the Amsha, Krishna is the Amshi, and all the other forms of Krishna, all the other incarnations are Amsha. So similarly, Arjuna, the form of Arjuna is the Amshi, and the form of, as in Nara Narayana, the Nara is an expansion of Arjuna. So as an Amshi and a Nitya Siddha, Arjuna is very much capable of remembering all the births that he has taken, accompanying Krishna in various forms. But here, Yogamaya covers that memory of Arjuna so that Bhagavad Gita can be spoken. So therefore, here Krishna says, Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Vetta Parantapa. I remember everything, O Arjuna, but you don't remember. Just like an ordinary conditioned soul, because Mahamaya covers. Therefore, he does not remember. Matta Smritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. But for Nitya Siddhas, sometimes Yogamaya gives memory, sometimes Yogamaya makes them forget their past births with Krishna for the purpose of the pastime. Whatever suits the pastime, Yogamaya does that. So then Krishna says, Ajopisan Abhyayatma Nam Ishwaropisan Prakritim Swam Adhishtaya Sambhavami Atmamaya. So here he very clearly establishes the nature of his birth. The very transcendental nature of his birth. He says, I am Aja, I am unborn. Arjuna may say, what is the big deal? I am also Aja. As a soul, I also don't take birth. Then Krishna says, oh, but I am Avyayatma. I am Avyayatma. I have an imperishable body when I appear. Do you have an imperishable body? No no conditioned soul has an imperishable body, right? Then he says, but the liberated souls, the Nitya Siddha souls, actually they do have imperishable bodies. Okay. So then he says that Bhutanam Ishvara, I am the Lord of all living entities. No liberated soul can, even liberated souls cannot claim that they are the Lord of all living entities. Only the Supreme Lord can claim. Though I am unborn and the Lord of all living entities, having an imperishable body, swam prakritim adhishtaya sambhavami. Sambhavami means, Sambhavami indicates Krishna's independence. When the living entity, when an ordinary living entity takes birth, he is forced to take birth. He is forced to take birth by the law of karma. I appear on my own. The word Sambhavami indicates independence, independent choice to appear, appearing out of one's own wish. The living entity can never say that. Krishna appears, Sambhavami, he can say. And then he says, Swam Prakritim Adhishtaya. Swam Prakriti means by my internal energy. I have a body made of my internal energy. Whereas the living entity, when he appears, he has a body made of the external energy. Okay. And he has a body made of internal energy, and he appears by his own energy, Atma Mayaya. Whereas when the living entity he appears, he is forced to appear by the law of karma and by the material energy. So in this way, Krishna very clearly establishes his Janma Rahasya, the very unique transcendental spiritual nature of his birth. So he says that even though I am unborn, but I take birth. So even though the living entity is unborn, but he also takes birth. But when the living entity takes the aja nature of the living entity is his constitutional nature, and his taking birth is actually conditional. Only the body takes birth, right? But in the case of Krishna, he's not taking birth and is taking both are transcendental. So you cannot say, just like the living entity, for the ordinary living entity, no birth is constitutional, birth is conditional. But for Krishna, birth and no birth both are constitutional. And simultaneously, it is true by the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, none of the living entities can say, Ajopisan, Avyayatma, Bhutanam, Ishwaropisan, Prakritim Swamadhishtaya, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. No living entity, conditioned or liberated or Nitya Siddhas, can claim to have all these qualities. Only Krishna. So this is his Janma Rahasya. Okay. So then the question is, when does he appear? Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatma sajamyaham. So he says, whenever there is dharmasya glani, decline in dharma, adharmasya abhyuttanam, increase in adharma, tada atmanam srijami. Even though the word srijami may indicate create, but because Krishna has already indicated in the previous verse, Avyayatma, I have a body which does not perish or diminish. Therefore, which means clearly he has mentioned that his body is spiritual. And how Srijami indicate create? It cannot, right? So the word Srijami has to be understood in conjunction with Avyayatma. So because Krishna's body is Avyayatma, therefore Srijami should indicate manifest and not create. So tada atmanam srijamyaham. I manifest my own body rather than I create my body. So when does Krishna appear? When there is a destruction of dharma and an increase of adharma, he appears at that time. Why does he appear? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So he says, I appear for three purposes: in order to deliver my devotees or protect my devotees, and to kill the demons, vinashaya cha dushkritam, and dharma samsthapanarthaya, to establish dharma. I appear yuge yuge. Yuge yuge can mean every day of Brahma or every yuga, like that. So now the question arises, does Krishna have to personally appear to accomplish these things? Can't Krishna do it through his devotees like the Rajarshis, other empowered personalities? Why does Krishna have to personally descend for that? So he says, Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhunam, okay, to deliver my devotees. So from suffering. Of his devotees are suffering from. Krishna says, oh, the only suffering of my devotees is um, actually separation from me. They feel separation from me, that is their suffering. So therefore, and that suffering cannot be destroyed if I don't come and show my form to them. So therefore, paritranaya sadhunam, I appear and deliver them from that suffering that they feel due to my separation, which cannot be done by anyone else. Vinashaya cha dushkritam, to destroy the demons. There are some particular demons who cannot be killed by any mere mortal, because they have been cursed to die from my hands only. So these are very special demons who cannot be killed, like Hiranyakashipu, Ravana. They cannot be killed by any ordinary human being. So therefore, to kill them, I have to specifically come. And dharma samsthapanarthaya, to establish the dharma of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam, to establish that dharma, I come. Okay. Like that. So Krishna says. So these are the three reasons. So his Janma Rahasya and his Karma Rahasya are have been established. So then he says, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Vetti Tatvatah Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Neti Mameti. So Arjuna. One who knows, Evam Yo Vetti Tatvatah, one who knows in truth, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, the transcendental nature of my birth and activities, as I have described in Ajopisan Navyayatma Bhutanam Itvaropisan Bahuni Me Vyatitani Janmani Tavacharjuna, and Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata, and Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Cha Dushkritam. In this way, I have described my Janma Rahasya and Karma Rahasya, and I have explained how my birth is Divya and my activities are Divya. So one who thus understands the transcendental nature of my birth and activities in truth, just by understanding and accepting that my birth and activities to be transcendental, saha deham taktva mameti, that person, by giving up his body, he will come to me. Punarjanmaneti, he will not have another birth. Just by understanding and realizing in truth the, so evam yo veti tatvatah. Tatvatah means realization. Veti means knowledge. Evam yo veti tatvatah means one who has known to such a degree that it has transformed into realization. Huh? Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti. So that person body, he does not take birth again and he attains me. Now someone may say, wow, this is so easy. I am a devotee. I accept Krishna's birth is transcendental, Krishna's activities is transcendental. So will I get, will I attain Krishna at the end of this life? Krishna says, yes, why not? If I don't chant, so which means I don't have to chant, I don't have to accept initiation, I don't have to perform Shravanam, Kirtanam, anything. Will I still attain? Well, let's see. But then Krishna says, are you sure you accept Krishna's birth and activities to be transcendental in truth? He says, yes, yes, I certainly do accept Krishna's birth and activities to be transcendental. Then Krishna says, then let me test you. There are some symptoms of a person who has understood and realized Krishna's birth and activities to be transcendental. What are the symptoms? Krishna says in the next verse. Vitaraga Bayakroda Manmaya Mam Upashrita Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Puta Madbhava Magata. So he says, Vitaraga. Such a person does not have any attachment to any opposing philosophy. Vitaraga. He has given up all attachment to other non-pure devotional philosophies. No attachment. No attachment for karma or Mayavad or Neo Mayavad and all these things. Vita Baya. And he is also free from the fear of such bogus philosophies or sub-religious, irreligious, quasi-religious, pseudo-religious ideologies. He is not fearful because he is very firmly rooted in his clear-cut understanding of the Shastra. Vita Raga, Vita Baya, Vita Krodha. And when someone speaks that philosophy, he does not become angry. Why he does not become angry? Because Manmaya. Because he is absorbed in hearing and chanting. So if a person has realized the transcendental nature of Krishna birth and activity, he cannot but be absorbed in hearing and chanting about Krishna. So if someone is not absorbed in hearing and chanting, then that person has not really understood in truth the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and activities. And Mam Upashrita, such a person will take complete shelter of Krishna. He will not take shelter of any other process other than bhakti, any other personality other than Krishna. So Manmaya Mam Upashrita. And Krishna asked, oh my God, I thought it was very easy to accept your birth and activities to be transcendental. Now you are telling that these are the symptoms of a person. Are there anyone who has attained these symptoms? Krishna says, Bahavo, many. There are many persons. Many persons. who have these qualities and mad bhavamagata and have attained love for me. So if one does not attain love for Krishna, if one does not have love for Krishna, then he is not janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha. If one does not have love for Krishna, then he actually has not really uh, realized that the birth and activities of Krishna are transcendental. And then he says, Jnana tapasa puta. And in order to reach this stage of Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Manmaya Mam Upashrita Bhavo, to reach that stage, there is Jnana Tapasa Puta. One has to be purified by the austerity of knowledge. What is this austerity of knowledge? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, for every right philosophical understanding, there are 100 incorrect philosophical understanding. Okay. So one has to carefully keep rejecting the incorrect non-sampradaya understanding of one should reject all those conclusions and accept firmly only the proper sampradaya understanding of the Siddhanta. And that includes austerity, because sometimes it might be easier to speculate. It might be easier to, rather than opening the book and trying to see what the acharyas have told, many times it might be easier to, hear from here and there, not verify the source and just speak it and understand it that way. But if one has to very chastely accept only the Sampradaya teachings from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, that is lot of austerity. Day in and day out, regularly, not deviating. And that is tapasya. That is jnana tapasa. And that jnana tapasa leads to puta, purification. And when one purifies himself in that way, then madbhava magata, he will attain love for God. And before attaining love for God, he will be vitaraga, vitabhaya, vitakrodha, manmaya, mam, upashrita. Like that Krishna says. These are the symptoms. So now, okay, the question in the chat box. You said that even Nitya Siddha devotees have an imperishable body, but we see acharyas leave the body in this world. Can you please clarify what the imperishable body is for the Nitya Siddha devotees? This is a very nice question. Actually, in one of the purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, when Krishna comes, he actually leaves, but that body is a Maya body to bewilder the demons. Right? We all know that. Similarly, when pure devotees descend, their body is not material, that is spiritual. But they leave behind a body, and that is just an illusion actually. That seems perishable, but it is not perishable. It perishes only in the eyes of the non-devotee. And a devotee actually chooses not to see that body through his material eyes. He sees the body through his spiritual intelligence and understands that whatever I perceive as perishing is illusion actually. In reality, it is not. It's not. Okay. Just like we see, when we are, the original Vrindavan is covered by the veil of ignorance. So no one can, no ordinary person can perceive the real Vrindavan, because the veil of Maya covers that Vrindavan. What we see is the veil only. But when one becomes qualified, one develops the eyes to see behind that veil, the real Vrindavan. Vrindavana Ramyastan Divya Chintamani Dham Ratana Mandira Manohara. Still Vrindavan is like that, but we don't get to see that because we try to see that Vrindavan through our eyes. So sadhakas, how do they access that Vrindavan? By adamantly trying to not see that Vrindavan through their eyes, but to try to see Vrindavan through their ears and their spiritual intelligence from the words of the Acharyas. Similarly, when we perceive the bodies of Acharyas also, we should not see through our eyes, because Atasri Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahyam indriyaihi sevonmukhehi jikvo swayameva spuratyatah. So our eyes cannot see the transcendental nature of either Krishna's body or his pure devotee's body. So therefore, we should adamantly refuse to believe what our eyes see, especially when we know, when our spiritual intelligence says that it is transcendental, then we should adamantly refuse to believe what our eyes say, because our eyes are not capable of seeing the transcendental nature. The veil of Maya covers not only the Dham of the Lord, but the Dham of the pure devotee also. Dham means body also. Is that okay, Prabhu? Is that relevant to your question? Okay. Okay. So let's move on. Then the next question is, but not everyone may accept Krishna's, because Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tatpatah. But not everyone may accept Krishna's body transcendental, his activities to be transcendental, right? People, some of the Mayavadis, they may seemingly worship Krishna, but they don't accept Krishna's name to be transcendental, form to be transcendental. Huh? And some of them may accept Krishna's form and the qualities, his birth and activities to be transcendental, but they may not worship him. They may not take pure shelter of Krishna. They may take shelter of little karma, little jnana, like that. So there are all kinds of permutations and combinations. Not everyone accepts Krishna's form, birth and activities to be transcendental. Even those who accept Krishna's birth and activities to be transcendental, they do not worship him for attaining pure devotional service with a pure devotional mode. So how does Krishna reciprocate? So Krishna says, Ye yatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. He says that, oh, I respond to people according to the way and extent of their surrender. So if some people reject my personal form and activities to be transcendental, then they get only material results, because a material person with a material body can give only material results. And if they ask for any transcendental result, I will not give, because how can a material person give transcendental result? But if they accept my body and activities to be transcendental, and if they ask for a transcendental result, I will bestow it. If they want mukti, I will give them mukti. If they want a material result, I will bestow material result also. And if they accept and activities, my birth and activities to be spiritual, and ask to establish a relationship with me, I will award that also for the pure devotee. So, ye yatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. Then then the question arises, then why do people give up the path of bhakti and follow the path of karma? Hmm. So why do people give up the path of bhakti and follow the path of karma where they ask for material results? Krishna says because material results come very fast. Kangshatah karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devata Shipram hi manushe loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. So he says that people still aspire for material results because they want quick results. And generally people who have that inclination for quick material results, they tend to have an inclination to worship the devatas. Yajanta iha devata. And because they want quick results, they worship. Okay. So then Krishna says, then Arjuna may say, look, you give material result for those who accept the path of karma, but transcendental result for those who accept the path of jnana and bhakti. Why is there a disparity? Why is there a partiality in you? Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagashah tasya kartaram api mam vidhi akartaram avyayam. So Krishna says, look, I have very impartially created the Varnashrama system, 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas. Okay. In which the distinction is according to Guna and Karma. Okay. So I don't specifically, give particular Varnas to some people, other Varnas to other people, like that. So even though I have made this system, but I am impartial because I am detached from the system. So Krishna says that I have created the 4 Varnas for people who want their own enjoyment. And I have also and if they follow this, if people want material enjoyment, I have created a system for them. But at the same time, people who follow that system, I have also created a means to transcend the material world also through that. So through Sakama Karma Yoga, you get your enjoyment, you perform your Varnashram duties and get your enjoyment. And eventually you get purified, come to the stage of Nishkama and transcend it also, and transcend the material world also. You can purify your heart of all material desires, then meditate on Brahman and attain liberation. Like that he says. So even though I have created this, I am impartial. I don't put particular people, I don't make all the people whom I like into Brahmanas, whom I don't like into Kshatriyas and Shudras, like that. No, I don't do that. I am impartial, like that Krishna says. Okay. So this is where we ended our discussion the last time we discussed. So now we are going to continue our discussion further. But before we continue the discussion, if there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share as add, we can take. Anything anyone would like to share, ask, or add, any questions, comments? Okay. If there is none, then we will continue our discussion. So Krishna continues his discussion. He says, Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale spriha iti mam yo bijanati karma virna sabhadyate. So Krishna says, Namam karmani limpanti. Actions do not contaminate me. Name karma phale spriha. I have no desire for the fruits of work. Why actions do not contaminate Krishna? Actually, the meaning The answer is because Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary person. So there is no karmani limpanti is for only for ordinary living entities. But still Krishna here says karma does not contaminate me because name karma phale spriha. I do not have desire for the fruits of my work. Okay. Iti mam yo abhijanam. Iti manati. One who knows this about me. Karma nasa badhyate. He will not be bound by action. Indicating one who understands the secret of not being attached to the fruits of one's activities, he will not be bound by action. So basically, he says that why the path of why you have created, why do you give only material results and bondage due to the path of karma, and why do you give transcendental results through the path of jnana and bhakti? Krishna says, look, karma need not bind. The path of karma does not necessarily bind. If you understand the art of action in inaction, inaction in action, which means acting without attachment to the lower fruits of this material world. Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale spriha. Karma does not touch me or bind me because I do not desire the fruits of work. One who understands this about me will not be bound by karma himself. This is what Krishna says. So, Krishna, even though in the previous verse he says, Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam gunakarma vibhagashah. Tasya kartaram apimam vidya kartaram avyayam. You know, even though I am the creator of, but I am still detached from it and I am not affected by it. I am, but Arjuna may say, but you still appeared in a Kshatriya family, and I see that you daily perform your Kshatriya duties, and it very clearly seems that you are subsisting as a Kshatriya, right? Or some people may say Vaishya, whatever, Vaishya or Kshatriya, depending on whether you see Krishna as the son of Vasudeva or Nanda Maharaj. So someone may say that, oh, you actually seem to, you definitely did appear in a Kshatriya family and you married like a Kshatriya, you perform all the prescribed duties of a Kshatriya. Uh, but Krishna says, oh, but these activities do not contaminate me as they contaminate the Jiva. Nor do I have desires for the results of those actions such as desire for Swarga. So I don't have any desire for the material results that may come from practicing one's Varnashrama system, because by properly practicing Varnashrama, one acquires piety, punya, and by that punya one can purchase, fulfill all one's material desires. But I don't have any material desires, Krishna says. I don't desire the results of any of these actions. He says, being full of my own bliss because I am the Supreme Lord, the only reason for my doing those actions is to encourage mankind. Loka Sangraham, as Krishna says. Loka Sangraham evapi sampashya. In the third chapter also Krishna says, Name partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana, nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Yadi hyaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandritah, mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashah. Utsideyur ime lokan na kuryat karma chedaham sankarasya cha kartasyam upahanyami ma praja. So in these three verses, Krishna says, look, actually, I am not bound by any karma. Name partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana. In these three worlds, I have no karma that I need to perform. I have no prescribed duties. Huh? But varta eva cha karmani, but still I perform my prescribed duties. Why? Because यदि ह्यहम न वर्तेयम जातु कर्मण्यतन्द्रितः मम वर्तमानो वर्तन्ते मनुष्या पार्थ सर्वशः. If I don't perform these duties because I am the Supreme Lord, and if I neglect, then people will say that, oh, if even Krishna does not follow, then I don't think it is important to follow these duties. So common man will also stop following. And then Uchideyur ime lokan nakuryam karma chedaham sankarasya kartasyam upahanyam yama praja. And if seeing me, if common man stops performing his varnashram duties, he will lose his varna. Then all the children who will be born to such people will be varna sankaras, and in this way, sin will proliferate in this whole world. So therefore, even though I am not bound by any karma and I don't have any karma to perform also, but still I perform only to set the right example for common man. He who knows this is not bound, but he does not know it is bound by karma. So there are two understandings to this. One understanding is that he who knows that Krishna is not an ordinary person, he is the Supreme Lord. So therefore, there are no prescribed duties to him. So therefore, if he appears as a Kshatriya, he is not bound by the Kshatriya rules. If he appears as a Vaishya, he is not bound by the Vaishya rules because he is transcendental. Which means if one understands Krishna's Janma and Karma are Divya, then Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti. Why? Because such a person will not be bound by karma. So one who understands this nature of Krishna, he will not be bound. So this is like a corollary of Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Vetti Tattvataha. Another understanding of this verse is that Krishna says that Namam Karmani Limpanti Name Karma Phale Spriha. Karma, I am not bound by any activity because I don't have the desire to enjoy any material fruits of my action. Itimamyo abhijanati karmabir nasabadhyate. One who understands this from my action and my intention, he will also not perform any of his prescribed duties with a desire to enjoy the cheap material fruits, and therefore he will also be not bound to this material world. So these are the two different meanings of this verse. Okay. So first meaning is one who understands that Krishna is not an ordinary person. So even though he may seem to be performing and ashrama, that is just to set the right example. Otherwise, Krishna as the Supreme Lord is not bound by any ordinary material duty. One who understands in this way, one who understands the transcendental nature of Krishna will not be bound to this material world. Second understanding is because Krishna says here that Name Karma Phale Spriha, I do not have any attachment to the fruits of my activities, therefore I am not bound to this material world. And a person who observes this attitude in me will also not be attached to enjoying the cheap material fruits that his duties, but that the performance of his duties might give him. So by one who understands this thing will not be attached to the cheap material fruits, and in that way, by performing his prescribed duties, his heart will become purified, and eventually he will become qualified for liberation. Like that. That's what Krishna is telling in this verse. Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phale spriha, iti mamyo bijanati karma birnas badhyate. Any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share as okay. If there is none, we will continue our discussion. Then Krishna says, Evam gyatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhi kuru karma eva tasmat tvam purvair purvataram kritam. Mumukshu, mumukshubhi, those desiring liberation, purvairapi, even in ancient times, kritam karma, they evam gyatva, knowing this. Knowing this means what was mentioned in 4.14, which means detached work. Okay. So detached work leads to liberation. Liberation eventually, but before that, purification of heart. Okay. So mumukshubihi, those who have liberation as their goal, even in ancient times, kritam karma, they performed actions. Actions here refers to varnashram duties. Evam gyatva means understanding the importance of detached work, being detached from the material fruits of their actions. Evam gyatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi tasmat. Therefore, my dear Arjuna, tvam kuru karma eva. You should also perform your varnashram duties. Purvaihi purvataram kritam. Exactly in the same way your purvajas performed. Your purvajas, the way they performed detached work, aiming for liberation, in the same way, you should also perform detached work, aiming for liberation. Don't be attached to the cheap material fruits that can come through the punya that is accumulated by performing your varnashram duties. Be detached from accumulating, purifying your heart, and thereby attaining liberation. That is how your ancestors performed karma. Therefore, Arjuna, you should also perform your karma in that mode. Don't be attached to the cheap material fruits. Durena hi avaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanam kripanaha falahetava. Krishna already mentioned it in the summary to the whole Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter. Durena hi avaram karma. This he spoke after indicating uh, कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भूर्मा ते संगोऽस्त्व कर्मणि. So Krishna, O Arjuna, perform your prescribed duties, but do not be attached to the cheap material fruits, like that. So therefore, the same thing here re-emphasizes in Durena hi avaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. And the same thing Krishna is again re-emphasizing here in this fourth chapter, where he is still talking about Nishkama Karma Yoga. So therefore, here he is telling to Arjuna, Evam gyatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvair purvataram kritam. O Arjuna, understanding this key principle of which I mentioned in the previous verse, Name karma phale spriha. I do not have attachment to the fruits of my actions, the material fruits of my actions. Understanding this, your ancestors also performed their varnashram prescribed duties in the same way and attained perfection. Therefore, you just don't have to think much. Just to follow your ancestors. Just follow your ancestors and perform your prescribed duties, varnashram prescribed duties, without being. That's what Krishna is telling here in this verse. So understanding how I have acted without being bound. Previously, persons like Janaka performed karma in order to promote it with the people. So therefore, for the purpose of uh, for that purpose, you should perform. Any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share, ask, add before we move ahead? It's Shamli Mataji or Shamlal Prabhu? Yes, Prabhu.
So, Prabhuji,
Yes.
in our previous discussions, we have discussed how Varanashram is not meant for devotees because Varanashram is like sorry, sorry. Varnashram comes in, it's like Karma Yoga उसमें आता है. लेकिन अर्जुन is a pure devotee. So Krishna is still telling you perform your Varnashram like your ancestors.
Okay. Yes, nice question, Prabhu. Very nice question. I think this question will keep coming throughout Bhagavad Gita. So we have to understand this whole setting of Bhagavad Gita. I think we did discuss this a few times before, but it's very actually, I will just mute you for a second. Actually, Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat. It says all the Upanishads are like cows. Dogda Gopalanandana, the milkman or the cowherd boy is Krishna. Arjuna is Vatsa, the calf. Only when the calf comes, the cow will give milk out of its Vatsalya. Okay, so you need the right person, seeing whom the cow will feel very, very benevolently disposed and give its milk. But whom is the milk meant for? Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta. The Bhokta, so Bhagavad Gita is compared to the milk, and the Bhokta are the recipients of Bhagavad Gita, not Arjuna. So if you see the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, especially those verses like this particular verse, Kuru Karmaiva Tasmat Tvam Purvai Purvataram Kritam, these are like normative verses, or Karmanyevadhikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana, where instructing to do something, okay, instructing to perform a particular sadhana. If you see throughout Bhagavad Gita, none of the 700 verses are meant for us. Especially those verses in which Krishna is instructing Arjuna to perform a particular sadhana, none of those are meant for Arjuna. The instructions on Sakama Karma Yoga are not meant for Arjuna because Arjuna is a pure devotee. The instructions on Nishkama Karma Yoga are not meant for Arjuna because Arjuna is a pure devotee. The instructions on Jnana Yoga is not meant for Arjuna because Arjuna is a pure devotee. The instructions on Ashtanga Yoga are not meant for Arjuna because Arjuna is a pure devotee. And the instructions on pure devotional service, like Manmanabhav Madbhakto Sarvadharman Parityajya, these instructions are also not meant for Arjuna because instructions are meant only for sadhakas. For Siddhas, the perfected devotees, they do not work because of instruction. They work, the pure devotees perform devotional service out of spontaneous love. They don't need instructions. So Arjuna does not need any instruction. So therefore, this whole setup of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna is the milkman and the Upanishads are the cows. But the cows will give any knowledge, whether it is knowledge of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, only when the cow is benevolently disposed towards the calf. So it needs a proper recipient. So when Krishna wants to establish the science of Karma Yoga, science of Jnana Yoga, science of Ashtanga Yoga to the whole world, through the Upanishads, by extracting the essence of the Upanishads, the cow of the Upanishads will feel benevolent. They need a calf like personality disposed to give the teachings. Even though Arjuna does not need the teachings, just like the calf does not need all the milk that is generated in the udder of the cow. Similarly, Arjuna does not need any of the teachings because he is already a perfected devotee. This includes teachings on Bhakti Yoga. But Upanishad will not give the teachings to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. It needs a valuable, recipient, a calf-like personality, so that they feel very benevolently disposed to give all that knowledge with any inhibition. So therefore, Krishna chooses Arjuna, even though he does not need any of those teachings. So therefore, if you see, none of the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita are meant for Arjuna, actually. But so therefore, when Bhagavad Gita says, in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says, Karmanyeva adhikaraste, your adhikar is to perform karma, that does not mean Arjuna is a karma yogi. Or ma phalesh padachana, but don't be attached to the fruits. That does not mean Krishna is a nishkama karma yogi. Because elsewhere, Krishna also tells Arjuna, hato va prapsasi swargam jitva va mokshase mahi. Arjuna, you should fight. Because if you fight and lose, you will get swarga. If you fight and win, you can enjoy the kingdom. So Krishna is trying to give this argument of material enjoyment as an incentive to fight, and which is actually an instruction for a Sakama Karma Yogi. But Arjuna is not a Sakama Karma Yogi. Krishna says, tapasvibhyo diko yogi, karmibhyo bhi matodikaha, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. He says, oh, a yogi is better than a karmi, a tapasvi, a jnani. Jnanibhyo bhi diko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So therefore, you be an Ashtanga yogi, Krishna says. That does not mean Arjuna is qualified for Ashtanga yoga. So and similarly, when Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. That does not mean when Arjuna is given this instruction, it does not mean Arjuna till then was not surrendered to Krishna. And or it also does not mean that Arjuna had many sinful reactions which were not destroyed, and therefore Krishna is promising to destroy the sinful reaction. No. Actually, we have to understand this whole setup of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is just using Arjuna as a prototype Sakama Karma Yogi, as a prototype Nishkama Karma Yogi, as a prototype Jnana Yogi, as a prototype Ashtanga Yogi, as a prototype Bhakti Yogi, to give all the instructions, while Arjuna does not need any of those instructions. So therefore, one should not literally take any of the verses of Bhagavad Gita to gauge the adhikar of Arjuna, to gauge the qualification of Arjuna. None of our acharyas do that. Is that relevant, Prabhu?
Perfectly agreed. My question was, of course, as practicing devotees, how relevant is it that I mean, for us as, how would this be practically? Because Arjuna is already in a different level, but for us,
Mhm.
should we think about it, like because we've already discussed this previously, that we do not know our varna, we do not know our ashrama. Whatever we are doing, the rest is all by
Mhm.
grace of Guru and Krishna. So
Correct.
so in
So
our
basically,
practical,
your question is, yeah,
so
go ahead, go. Finish your question.
in our practical lives, uh, when we say
Mhm.
prescribed duties, do we actually take our practice of devotional services as prescribed duties, or we just say that, okay, do your duty and just go ahead?
Yeah. Thank you, bro. Thank you. I sort of understood the question, um, but I just wanted to before that address a different issue. That's why I gave that answer about Arjuna. But I sort of understood your question before only. So the point is, we have to understand what is the nature of this book Bhagavad Gita. Okay, this Bhagavad Gita is not that comprehensive, but in terms of principles, it gives it's a law book for the practicing Nishkama Karma Yogi, Ashtanga Yogi, Bhakti Yogi in general. And there are sub varieties in it, Karma Mishra Bhakta, Jnana Mishra Bhakta, like that. So there are sub varieties. So Bhagavad Gita gives instructions for all. Okay. So we have to know which instruction applies to us and accept it. So now, when we say Varnashrama Dharma is not meant for devotees, uh, does it mean devotees do not perform? Then does it mean there is no dharma for devotees? No, dharma is there, but just that the dharma is not defined by the dharma shastras. Okay, because as we had discussed before, there is no meaning of dharma without defining adhikar or qualification. So the qualification, if one has dharma adhikar, then his dharma is defined by the karma shastras or the dharma shastras. Okay, if one has jnana adhikar, then his dharma is defined by the jnana shastras. If one has bhakti adhikar, then his dharma is defined by the bhakti shastras. So if you want to know what is our dharma, then it is defined in the Bhakti Shastras like Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Srila Rupa Goswami gives 64 limbs. That is our dharma. But having said that, our acharyas also describe dharma is of two types, primary limbs and secondary limbs of bhakti. Bhakti means the 64 limbs. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, surrendering to a guru, accepting Diksha and Siksha, serving the guru, inquiring about bhakti from the guru, following the Bhakti Shastras nicely, uh, not not accepting asat sangha, and all those things. Okay, so that is actually those 64 limbs are primary limbs. Now our acharya says there are secondary limbs also. Secondary limbs means those activities which will support the primary limbs. Like say for example, you are married, you have two children, you have one wife, you have your parents, you have your extended family, your brother's family, who may also be looking up to you for certain things. You have your wife's family. Okay. So considering your own practice of bhakti and the to support your own practice of bhakti and to support the practice of bhakti of your family members, immediate and extended, you may have to do certain activities. Like for example, profession. You have to perform a profession. Okay. So that profession comes under not varnashrama. That profession comes under bhakti. And if you perform varnashrama, if you have karma adhikar, then you have to accept a profession purely according to your varna, and you cannot do any other profession of any other varna. But when you accept bhakti, then the principle of accepting a profession is see whether it is anukul for your bhakti or not. So accepting profession, care of family, taking care of social responsibilities, all of that falls within the realm of bhakti. Okay, that is the holistic understanding of bhakti. Bhakti includes all of that, but all of that is accepted in the mood of anukulyasya sankalpo pratikulyasya varjana. That is accepted and performed in a way that is anukul for bhakti, and if it is pratikul for bhakti, it is rejected. So therefore, we don't reject something because it falls within the category. We don't reject an activity because it falls within the category of varnashrama. No. If any activity is supporting my bhakti or the bhakti of my family or the society, I will accept it. But not because that activity falls within the ambit of my varna and ashrama, but because it supports my bhakti, the bhakti of my family, the bhakti of my of the society. For that purpose, one may accept. So we neither reject something because it falls under varnashram. We neither accept something because it falls under varnashram. Our acceptance and reject is based on the principle of whether it supports my practice of bhakti, whether it supports the practice of my family's bhakti, society's bhakti, or it is an obstacle to it. So the principle of acceptance and rejection changes. So we don't just reject, oh, this is a varnashram activity, I will reject it. No, we don't reject it like that. Oh, if it is favorable for my bhakti, I will accept it. But if it is not favorable for my bhakti, just because it is that activity, I will not just like that accept it. That is the understanding. Is that relevant now, bro?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, bro. Thank you. Okay, there is something else in the chat box. Okay. The question is, one who knows that Krishna is not attached to results will not be bound by karma. Does just knowing is sufficient, or does he need to get purified as well by not having attachment for results? Well, if you know it, then you will endeavor to be not attached to your results. And just because you are not attached to your results does not mean just like a person who enrolls in a college, he knows that in order to be a topper of this college, if that is his goal, then he knows that I should give up my attachments to all these kind of silly entertainment and focus on my studies. Just because he has understood it, the inclination, even though he does not honestly want to engage in any silly entertainment, but the inclination and the itch for that silly entertainment will not immediately vanish. It will take some time. So therefore, just like a sadhaka wants Krishna Prem, and he does not want to anger, envy, greed, illusion, and pride. But it takes, even though he knows that it is wrong, it is not favorable for his bhakti. That does not mean it will immediately vanish. It will take some time. Similarly, even though the Nishkama Karma Yogi aspires for liberation, but still attachment to material things in the form of anarthas still exist in his heart. Just like attachment to the lower things, to material things in the form of anarthas exists in the heart of a sadhaka bhakta. Similarly, a Nishkama Karma Yogi is like a sadhaka. So even though his goal is liberation, but still his heart has impurities, these material attachments in the form of anarthas, like that. So once that gets purified, then gradually he will attain liberation. Is that relevant, Prabhu? Is that clear? Okay. Okay. So if there are no further discussion points or questions, let us move ahead to the next verse. So Krishna says in this next verse, Kim karma kima karmeti kavayopyatra mohitaah tatte karma pravakshyami yajñātvā mokṣase shubhat. Kavayah api atra mohitaah. Even the wise people are bewildered. Kim karma, kim akarma iti. Even the wise people are bewildered about action and inaction. What is action? What is inaction? Okay. Because wise people also think that action means it will give reaction. And if I don't want reaction, then I should think like that. Even very great people may think like that. Kavayopyatra atra mohitaah. Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayopyatra mohitaah. So tat te karma pravakshami. Because it is a confusing subject matter, I will speak to you about that action. Yad jnatva mokshase ashubhat. I will speak to you about that action by knowing which you will be liberated from samsara. So that action here refers to Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay. Because in Nishkama Karma Yoga, there is Karma Yoga, there is action, right? But that is moksha se avat. That action is capable of liberating that person from samsara. Tatte karma pravakshami. So te tat karma pravakshami. I will speak to you about that action by knowing which you will be liberated from samsara. Even though in principle he has already told, now he is going to little bit elaborate on this. Okay. Till now, Krishna is still speaking about Nishkama Karma Yoga only to Arjuna. Okay. So here Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, moreover, action is not to be performed by the intelligent person just in an imitative way. It should be performed after having understood its varieties. So you cannot imitate. Someone is doing this, so you also cannot do. Or someone is not doing something, you also cannot stop doing it. You have to know, because you have to know whether person fall within the same category of adhikar, and there are also subcategories of adhikar. So if you don't understand that, then you cannot just imitate. In today's day and age, the kind of dharma that people are telling, oh, follow dharma. Okay, I am willing to follow dharma, but does everyone have the same dharma? So therefore he says, first, the difficulty in understanding karma is this. Not every people properly understand karma also. Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayopyatra mohitaah. Tatte karma pravakshami yadgyatva mokshase ashubhat. What is karma? What is akarma? What will bind? What will liberate? Even the intelligent people are actually confused about it. Let me talk to you about that karma which will liberate you, O Arjuna. That Krishna says. So then he says, Karmano hyapi bodhavyam cha vikarmanah Akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gatihi. Bodhavyam. One should certainly understand about karma, vikarma, and akarma. Karmanaha, vikarmanaha, akarmanascha bodhavyam. One should clearly understand about it. Why? Why one should endeavor so much to understand it? Because gahana karmano gatihi. Because the truth about this is very difficult to understand. Therefore, any oversimplified explanation of this can be misleading. Actually, probably is wrong because it is not that easy. Don't oversimplify things. Okay. Many times oversimplify lack of mature intelligence. When one lacks mature intelligence, it often leads to oversimplification of principles which may actually be quite sophisticated than what one thinks actually. So, so he says, Vishwanath Chakrabarti says, one should understand the truth about vikarma. What is vikarma? That performance of forbidden actions which lead to misery. So, forbidden actions is vikarma, which will lead to misery. And what is akarma? Akarma means avoidance of action by the sannyasi. How can that lead to auspiciousness? Okay. So now you don't see a sannyasi performing his varna dharma. Okay. Or his griha dharma, ashrama dharma. So now, and he is glorified for that. So someone may think, oh, I will also do that. Will I be glorified? No. Why one is glorified? Why another is not glorified? So that is why Gahana Karmano Gatihi. Because that person has the qualification. Oh, now you are introducing another subject matter, qualification. How do I understand the qualification? That is why Gahana Karmano Gatihi. That is why it is very difficult to understand the subject matter. It's not very easy. Okay. So what Vikarma is performance of forbidden. Akarma is how a sannyasi avoids action and it is very auspicious. So how will one obtain the highest goal without knowing the truth about these things? So one should know karma, akarma, and vikarma. The real truth about karma, akarma, and vikarma is hard to understand. In the last line, the word karma is used to represent all these three types. Gahana karmano gatihi means Gahana akarmano gatihi, Gahana vikarmano gatihi, Gahana karmano gatihi. So all three types of to understand what is forbidden action. Killing is forbidden for a Brahmana. For a Kshatriya, it is recommended action. Okay. So even the subject matter of forbidden action is very difficult to understand. And what is apat dharma? Under apatkalin paristhiti, who can do what, who cannot do what, and how do you define apatkalin paristhiti? How do you define apatkalin paristhiti? So these are all very gahana karmano gatihi. Even to understand forbidden action, there are certain things which may be commonly forbidden for all, but that is very small. Most of the forbidden things are very specific to particular varna, particular ashrama. Even the science of forbidden action is very difficult to understand. So karma, prescribed duty, vikarma, prohibited actions, and akarma, under what circumstances one can give up. Therefore, I will teach you about it. Krishna says, Gahana Karmano Gati. कर्मणो हि अपि बोद्धव्यं च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोद्धव्यं गहना कर्मणो गति. Oh Arjuna, these subject matters are very difficult to understand. I will teach you this subject matter in detail. Any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share? Ask. Okay. If there is none, then we will pause our discussion here. It's already 9:30. So thank you all very much for your patient listening and your enthusiastic participation. We will continue discussion again next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.